Hi, welcome to Anything is Possible. I'm Tamara, and this is Wookie, and we live on Lake Chapala in Jalisco, Mexico. This week and probably next week also, I'm going to be covering a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is the dogs of Mexico. Just so that you know, Wookie was a rescue dog back when I lived in Sonora, California. He was a very sorry sight to see when I first got him. He was just terrified and would just walk around hunched over with his little tail between his legs. He did submissive peeing for weeks until I got him calmed down and realizing that life was good and I wasn't going to hurt him. He might have been abused. He was probably on the streets for a while, and he was very thin. And I've had him now for about 12 years, and he's living the good life here with me. But I have fostered and worked in shelters for many, many years over my adult life, and dogs and cats and other animals that find themselves homeless are something that's really important to me. There are a lot of street dogs here. Some of them are in fine shape and they probably belong to somebody, but there's a lot of them that are wandering the streets and they are malnourished. A lot of times they'll be skin and bones, really hungry all the time. Their fur is in terrible shape. They have fleas, and actually distemper and rabies has become more common lately here because vaccinations haven't happened. I think that is just all part of the sad street dog life here, and my hope is to raise awareness of their plight and what you can do to help these animals. The first thing I want to say is that Mexico is just, everybody's got a dog, it seems like. There's a lot of dogs in this area, and a lot of them end up on the streets. And it turns out that it seems to be part of the culture here. I know in my area, there's dogs that are let out just to wander, not necessarily 24/7. Sometimes they actually tie them up at a business during the day, or some of them confine them at night. But if the gate, they aren't home by the time the gate is closed, the dog spends the night out wandering the streets. So I actually put out food and fresh water, nice filtered water, in a couple of containers out in front of my house. They are eaten up every single night by, mainly put it out there for the cats that I feed, but I have a security camera and the dogs certainly avail themselves of it, and it's often dogs that belong to somebody here in the neighborhood. So I'm still trying to understand this culture of letting your dogs just wander. They may think that gringos are over controlling, that maybe they feel sorry for our dogs even, that they are always on a leash or always in a yard and not allowed the freedom to make their own decisions about where they want to roam. But of course, to us it seems they can get into all kinds of trouble. I live a block away from a very busy street, and it's really easy for dogs to get hit by a car, injured, and they end up, either getting killed or hurt, severely, and that costs vet bills. So I'm still trying to understand that. And another thing is, if you see street dogs, they almost invariably have not been neutered or spayed. So the fact that there's already a lot of dogs on the street, um, there's more puppies all the time. Um, and so, I've taken it upon myself to trap the cats locally, and I have a neighbor who gets the dogs and get them fixed. But there are Americans also that are of the opinion that denying a male dog of his masculinity, if you get him fixed, quite honestly, a male dog can end up creating a lot of problems by making multiple litters of puppies wherever he wanders. And females also, just you end up with lots of dogs. Another thing that's important in this area, there was only one shelter in this particular area anyway that was run by the local municipality, and it was closed down because, man, it only takes a couple of neighbors to complain about the noise, and that's what happened apparently. And they shut the shelter down with like 24-hour notice, or maybe not even that they had to get all the dogs out. They still shelter cats, but they have no more dogs, and they're not allowed to. So locally, at least there were a couple of shelters locally that absorbed those dogs on very short notice. I know of one that really didn't have the facilities to accommodate those dogs, but they took them in anyway, which saved lives. But it was rough on the shelter and rough on the dogs and rough on the people that have to deal with that. So at this point in time, there is no government-run shelter. So if you find a dog, the only way to try and find the owners really at this point is to post on a local Facebook page of lost and found animals. And not everybody's on Facebook. And hope that the word gets out, and otherwise then people usually hold the dogs for a while, and then they try and find homes for them locally. So the other thing is that microchipping here is not really a thing. I found out the hard way just this last week. I decided, oh my gosh, I haven't updated all of my pets' microchip information. And so I decided, well, I better get on. And the fact that I've adopted dogs and cats from various different shelters over a period of several years, they all have different microchip companies. I have one that's with Home Again. I have one that's with Avid, and one was with, it was a nonprofit organization running this that you could list all of your animals on the same site, and that has been dissolved and bought all of that information by a private company. So now it actually costs money to register your pet, an annual fee, and you have to pay that before you can get on and update the information. So I found out that Avid is the only one that will allow me to put in my Mexican contact information, my Mexican phone number and my location here. Home Again doesn't allow anybody out of the United States. So if you move, you have to, inject your animal with another microchip, which would be an international microchip, which apparently is listed with somebody else, and I haven't looked into it because, frankly, I haven't heard that too many people, when they find an animal, that they don't seem to even scan them. I don't know how many of the vets even have scanners. So microchips really are not a thing here. I'm just going to have them wear tags. And that's easy for people to look at and have an ID, and hopefully they won't get ripped off at some point. None of my animals are like purebreds or worth anything in terms of selling them. So Two of them are quite old, and they've all been spayed, neutered, so they can't be bred, and so I'm not too worried. But um, make sure if you have an animal that you're traveling with, microchip is probably not going to be terribly useful. Best to have good ID on a collar um, with current information so that people can just call. What I've been working on this week actually is trying to find homes. I've been with a couple of other volunteers, and we went out to a couple of the shelters that are housing these dogs that were left still from the shelter that was shut down last year. It's going on a year now, and these dogs still haven't found homes. So I decided that I would do some videoing and come up with some cute videos and try and find these last few dogs someplace to go. And it's looking like a large number of them will be going to shelters up in the Pacific Northwest or Canada. And the videos are being released. If you want more information there, I will put it down below. They're saying that at the end of the month, one of these places where the dogs have been is closing down also. So those dogs probably will go to a high kill shelter in Guadalajara if we do not find them a place to go, whether it's another shelter up north that can take them, or people that are willing to foster locally or take them as their own pets. And they're all really nice dogs. Most of them have been in the shelter for quite a while, and they are not leash trained. They haven't been through any kind of doggy training. So there's work to be done, but that's true of most dogs. There's very few dogs that actually come pre-programmed. Once in a while you come across one that was well trained, but by and large, no matter what dog you get, whether it's a puppy from a breeder, which I certainly hope you don't, or from a shelter, or a private individual that has puppies that they're trying to find homes for. Most dogs require work. I mean, a lot of dog training is actually teaching the owner the commands, teaching the owner that they need to be consistent, teaching them how to interact with their pet, getting the pet to bond with the owner enough so that they're eager to please. You can't have a trainer come or take your dog away to some place to be trained and come back and expect it to be good, because you don't know your part of the deal. And it is really, really important for you to be in a class with your pet and, teach them together as a team how to behave. Some of the street dogs, like I say, they belong to somebody. You can usually tell if the animal looks fairly healthy, and well fed, isn't skin and bones, and doesn't have any apparent diseases. A lot of times that dog will actually have a home, and you don't want to go confiscating somebody's pet. There could be kids at home that love that dog, and it is just making its rounds, and it goes back home and gets a good meal and a nice place to sleep. You just don't know. But the ones that are in bad shape, that have pretty much been outside consistently in your neighborhood, they're sleeping on the streets. A lot of times, you'll find them huddled in a doorway or just trying to find a little piece of shade somewhere. They're often dirty, straggly hair, got mane. If you see a dog in your neighborhood that is looking really bad, and you've seen it repeatedly, and it tends to just hunker down someplace in a doorway or is running scared, it's probably lost, or it has no home. And I would really appreciate if you would have the kindness in your heart to help that poor thing out, because I don't know, people have their own ideas about animals, but I look at them as just fellow creatures on the earth. They're conscious, thinking, feeling, affectionate, wonderful little things that can share your world. I guess there's people that kind of look at them as not really on the same level as a human. And I guess in terms of intelligence, they're not, but they definitely have feelings and emotions, and they form attachments really quickly and easily to somebody that shows them some kindness. So even if you can only take in a street dog for a while, get it cleaned, get it groomed, get it spayed and neutered, get it vaccinated. Just because you see a dog that looks really terrible doesn't mean that it's hopeless. A lot of people here take in dogs. I know just on my street there's 3 or 4 people that have 6 or 7 dogs. A lot of them are street dogs. A lot of them they're trying to find homes for. A dog that comes in that's malnourished, injured, a lot of times the mange does not mean that it can't turn into a really, really wonderful pet. And there's some happy stories here. One of my neighbors has a dog that will be going up really soon, in the next week or two, to a wonderful home that they found in Canada. And it's going to be a wonderful family, and they are really excited about getting it, and they're flying the dog up to Canada, and this family is going to drive quite a long distance to go and get the dog where it's coming in on this flight. I have another friend who has taken in a couple of dogs off the streets of Chapala that were just stray, trying to make do on the streets, and they brought the dogs into their home, got them healthy, got them spayed, neutered, and got them vaccinated and socialized. And one of those dogs they ended up adopting, and a couple others they ended up working with the local private rescue groups to get them homes. And so now they are happily in homes of their own. So it's not hopeless. Even if you see a dog in very bad shape, please have pity on it and help it out. It isn't going to get better on its own. It needs people to help. That's what I'm going to cover this week. There's more aspects I'll cover next week, but there are a lot of street dogs here. I hope you have a good week. Please be kind to your fellow beings on the earth. Thanks a lot. Bye.